Welcome everyone to another episode of the Shaman's Way podcast. As always, this episode comes from the teachings of our amazing friend and shaman in residence, Kriket. We hope you're enjoying these podcasts as much as we enjoy making them, and I'd like to take just a moment to ask you if you would please leave us a rating and a comment in iTunes or whichever podcast player you're listening to us from. Giving us a rating and sharing this podcast with others is the biggest way you can tell us that you like our show. Now, without further ado, on with the episode.
Well, hello to my constant listeners, my semi-constant listeners, and a very special hello to my very first listeners. I'm going to take you through my own experiences with the word safety. I wanted to call this podcast Safety because it appears to be one of the most sought after, misplaced, fill in your own blank, feeling, emotion, foundation that is missing from the many people that I meet in my healing room, as well as in my own self. This discussion, this chat, this particular, Fox's thoughts is based on some of my experience in the healing room, but I'm going to be sharing some of my own personal journeys to find safety, to perhaps share some of my own vulnerability, to share what one person's experience is in order to find or to introduce the concept of safety to a wounded psyche. If you will bear with, common in the healing room to listen to a human being and their story, to have a recounting of experiences, leaving a person experiencing abandonment, woundedness, sense of security, sense of safety, sense of self really lacking. And one of the questions that I ask very commonly is, when was the last time you felt safe? I generally have two very common responses. The first response is, I don't remember ever feeling safe. And the second response is, I don't remember the last time I felt safe. They're very different. They sound subtly different, but they're very different. One is the absolute rejection that safety ever existed. And the other is, it could have been possible, I just don't know. Very different. What do we do when we attempt to find safety? How do we journey to experience what safety is? The first time that I experienced safety wasn't in my own inspiration, but I went to a different circle. And the person who was leading the circle did a guided meditation. This particular guided meditation was to find safety. And as a result of that, I went on the guided meditation. What I imagined, what I went through was a timeline. And that timeline went from where I was back in my own life. And I stepped through at the age of 2 to 2.5. And when I stepped through to the other side of the timeline, I stepped into my 2.5-year-old true self to feel what it felt like to be safe. And that fundamentally changed my relationship to safety and to the experience of being safe. Prior to that, I perhaps would have put myself in the category of, I have never felt safe, but I could have also gone, being a Pisces Aries, I could have also gone into the, I don't remember when. But I think it's important to unpack that word safe and safety. Safe and safety are foundational concepts. The foundational concept that is built upon safety is vulnerability. And on top of vulnerability is chaos and protection. Over top of chaos and protection is acting out, or anger, or frustration. When we examine the experience of safety, we examine, from my own perspective, I examine the foundation of self. If safety is not a conscious relationship to self, or you don't feel safe, in my case, what I reacted, the way that I coped with my psyche believing that there was no safety or wasn't safe, was hypervigilance, was the ambivalence at times to my own life, was acquiescence to other people's ideas, to a very incredible temper, to isolation, like all sorts of ways to protect myself, because there was a missing piece to me that was that word safety. When I stepped into it as an adult, and I could have been in my late 40s or beginning 50s, I think I was in my 40s, and I stepped into that feeling, it changed the physiology of my body to recognize that I do have safety in the very core of my being. What proceeds, or what comes after this, is my own journey to recognize how I feel safe now. The comfort and healing I received by experiencing safety, recognizing it and going, oh, fuck, that's what it felt like. And the joy of, holy, I feel safe. It was just this joy, and there was wonderment, and there was awe, and I was like 2, so I mean, there'd be a lot of that stuff. But it was a foundational shift for me, because I knew that I was safe. So I did have access to safety. It was a part of me. It wasn't missing. It wasn't missing. I always had it. I just forgot about it. In one of the other podcasts, we talked about the 4 states, and we talked about the 4 functions, and the function of intuition, and the function of sensation, and the function of feeling were all activated at the same time. I went on a journey that led me intuitively to that place on my timeline of 2 years old. I felt the sensation in my body, which changed the physiological expression of safety. And I felt that emotion of safety and all that feeling of comfort, that feeling of balance, the feeling of all of those wonderful things. It was only when I came out of the journey that the thinking function, the intellectual part of myself, moved into attempt to unwrap it, unravel it, understand it, and unpack the word safety. The word safety in this way for me was a way to move through the world with more confidence, but not confidence as in the expression of, maybe aggressiveness or whatever self-confidence would look like. But instead, confidence that I didn't need to feel safe because I already was safe. And by already being safe, I could view the world different than I had ever viewed the world before. It was an internal, the inside eye shifted. The inside eye turned backwards in order to see forward. So here are some of my thoughts and my experiences when I moved with the feeling of safety. I imagined a safety house. My safety house had a picket fence. Next thing I know, I'm flying through the air and the Akashic records stand before me. And my guide, my gatekeeper, took me straight through to the hall. And there were others there. And I flew high up into the rafters. You all know I like a perched position, and I like to view things from a bird's eye view. In front of me, full of a golden book. fell in front of me, fell a golden book. I'm reading my own handwriting. My gatekeeper opened the book, and we were going to a particular day. It was the cause of the situation. Whatever that situation is, I no longer remember. I was erasing my bad feelings of not safe. When I saw myself, I thought I was going to be shown a horrible thing, the reason I wasn't safe, and we were then told to reach out. I reached through the page and took my 2-year-old hand and was safe. I wept. I had known safety. I had felt perfectly safe, perfectly in awe of the world. I wept and wept and wept. I forgot that I had felt safe. I forgot that I had ever felt that way. I said to myself, I was a ways safe. I just forgot. And I filled with peace. I merged with myself. I trundled along on little legs, feeling absolutely safe and happy and protected. We then flew to the next book. We flew down a bit from the rafters, and the next book was silver, and it opened to a mirror, and I wrote safe on my body, my armor of safe. I wrote safe down my chest, safe across my shoulders, safe down my spine, safe across my shoulders, safe. Then we went to what? That was a hard concept to wrap my brain around. What do I do? Is what I came up with. Practice your bliss. I remember if I don't practice my bliss, I don't stay in perfect balance and perfect place. And now I'm stepping outside of the journey to say that it's very challenging to stay in perfect balance and perfect place. Now, back to the journey. How and why? Why do you want to change? And why do you want to heal? And after I felt healed, I remember safety. I don't have to practice safe. I am safe. I am filled with light and healing from the connection around me. Perfect bliss. I felt the weight of my anger, my defense towards all that encountered disappear. I can feel heavier in myself. I don't have to be attacking or defending. I just am. I just accept who she is. I accept my relations. I accept my relationships. Safety is my house. I have never liked a house because it was never safe. My room, my bed, myself. The words were safe. Which was safe? Breaks. Books were safe. Cheryl was safe. Death was unsafe. Loving was unsafe. Loving was hurtful. Playing was unsafe. Losing was a loser. Loner, mysterious, thoughtful, wolf. The wolf is my root chakra guardian. Has my tooth for its amulet, guards me. But wolves are not. Loners, they are family. Loser. Ridiculed, not confidence. Creepy. Mangy. Safe. Hold, held, loved, supported. Heart cared for, protected, charmed, happy, yellow, safe. I am safe when I know where I stand. I am unsafe when I don't know where I stand. I feel unsafe when I am cut off. Why? Don't know thoughts. Image control. What do people think? I get angry when I feel cut off and unable to reach out and be touched back. I feel unsafe if I feel unloved, no love, unsure of emotions. Love is safety. Love is completely unsafe. When I think I am being judged, I don't feel safe. Safety is tied to others' opinions. Anyone else ever feel that way? My mother thought I was good, safe, not so good, unpredictable, unsafe, judgment, safety, withholding love, unsafe. Love as a tool of control, conditional love, not safe. Mentally ill. I can predict safety and unsafe. Emotional hurt, shut down and close. The door of freedom. Freedom gets stuck on my body when I am emotionally shut down, unsafe, emotionally shut down. Find comforts, unsafe. Freedom is my joy and comfort, unsafe. Take away my new comforts, unsafe. Into freedom, embrace, result, freedom, reality, don't move, punish myself by retreating. I did, however, wish to be better. So safety was a basic memory and a feeling, and silence may not be for you or for me. So retrieval with the inner child, niche journeys, redo that one, find the unsafe. Curses, not belonging, not being loved, obsession. These are my follow-up thoughts. How can I find meaning, and how can I find healing in all of the images that I saw, in the images of being shut down, in the images of free flow, of that relationship between, being emotionally shut down and finding comforts, unsafe, freedom in my joy of comfort. So that exact opposite. Freedom is my joy and comfort. So I'm unsafe. So take away my new comforts. That's, that coping. Reality, don't move. So freedom is movement. And reality, that trigger is the not movement. I mean, there's good aspects in that. The emotional healing. So the soul retrieval of the inner child. So the journeys, redo that one. So redo the one to find the safety. And when I did, I was still able to step back into that child self, to step back into that emotional self. So, and I worked on curses of not belonging, not being loved, obsession, and I did work around resiliency. What have I done in my life to experience freedom, to experience love, to experience, etc., 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 right? And then I did a journey to find the curses of not belonging, not being loved, and obsession. Those were points in my life and aspects of my behaviors that were very interesting to me. Still had a great effect on me, don't be wrong. However, they didn't have as great effect on me when I was journeying to them then as I did journeying to them when I was a younger woman, in my 20s, when I was doing this work, and in my early 30s. The curse of not belonging, I don't know if that can be specifically a curse for me. There was a specific curse of not belonging, but there is also that psyche of not belonging. There is that pain of not feeling safe. And if you don't feel safe, then you're not part of the community. If you're not part of the community, you don't feel like you belong. So there's that ripple effect of trauma. There's that ripple effect of just not feeling safe, whatever that means to you. The curse of not being love. Think about that. Not being, not giving, not receiving, but not being love. So standing fully in that place of love, emanating that whatever flame you and picture love to look like. For me, it's a golden flame that is in the direct center of self, in that exact place that I felt safety. That is that being of love. And when I journey to the enlightened being, the Bodhisattvas, the Buddhas, when I journey to the spirits of the upper realms, the realms of the higher levels of consciousness, they emanate the being of love. They emanate love as the essence of self. Obsession is that dark or the shadow side of seeking knowledge, seeking information. Obsession is blinded to all other and only focusing on that. We can, if you remember or are experiencing the very first days of your love relationship, if you're in one, perhaps you can recall that obsessed feeling of thinking about the other all day long and wondering, what did I think of prior to so-and-so coming into my life? That is a form of obsession. It's a fun obsession, but it is still an obsession. And then that moves into wherever the heck it moves into. So then I wanted to do a love track. So obsession, unsustainability, fanciful, object, not a person, needed, not nurtured, nurture, don't need. That was something that was really built into myself through the childhood that I had. Needed, not nurtured. Our mother needed us with her mental illness. The farm needed us to do work. There were constant needs. Nurture, don't need. That was the subtle message that my childhood self received, was to nurture but not to be need nurtured. And that carried into my first relationship and created a tumbling of effects and a tumbling of not so positive shadows of my personality, and my wounds come up for the first time. So wept for joy and tears in the middle of my face, moving through the parts of myself, attacking or defending. I am an effect of someone else's cause. Interesting. I am an effect of someone else's cause. What the hell does that even mean? So I pull that apart. Safety. I feel safe when I'm alone. So small witches, small miracles. I am safe. I am my own person. I decide I have control over who knows what and know to enjoy myself. What is it that makes me feel unsafe? Judgment, discourse, discovering my insecurities, thinking I'm a fraud, thinking I'm no good, thinking I'm no use, no ability. All of these aspects, volatile temper, those are some of the questions that I had to discover and take care of myself and see my own fears, my own insecurities, my own shadows that have grown and that have arisen from the very foundational shattering of safety. It grew into a house of fear of many different outcomes, the fear of discovering my own insecurities, all of the words that my soul would have had written upon it because of the childhood and the early adulthood that I did have. And, we all struggle. Life is not always going to be fair, going to be even, going to be kind to us. And we all struggle through this. If you don't have the same relationship to the word safety that I have, perhaps you can hear this and perhaps you can see a person in your life who may exhibit quietly some of the hallmarks or the waves or the nicks in the wood of their personality, because safety is not a part of the foundation of the soul, of the house of self, the house of safety. What about that house of safety? How do you create a house of safety? What does that look like? In the shamanism that I work with, we have a soul house, and it's called an uku. And in the soul house, there are representations of my childhood self, the pieces that felt unsafe or were unsafe. So I built a small spirit house, and I placed all of the childhood parts of myself that were unsafe, the parts of myself I wanted to let go of, the memories I wanted to let go of. And I made trinkets, I made different objects to represent what I was creating. And I put them into this tiny house, and this was my house of unsafe. This was my house of insecurity. This was the house of my wounds. And I was done with it. And I wanted, with reverence, with compassion, with understanding, with recognition, I wanted to wrap this house as lovingly as I could, because without all of those trinkets of my past going into that house, they would have stayed in me. And I was grateful for those pieces, because they created an awareness of not only my own feelings of being unsafe, but perhaps a global or social or even familial wound or detachment or disassociation from the word safe or from the emotional reality of safety. And in doing the blending of it, I smudged it. I used moon water on it, my form of, like shaman's holy water. And I wove wishes and prayers all into it. And then I took it to a graveyard and I buried it alongside of another grave, and I allowed my childhood and the death of those memories, the letting go, the release of those memories, to be taken into the miasma of the death energy, to cross the threshold, to go straight into the spirit world, and to be received and to be remembered and to be transformed. The letting go, the burial, the acceptance that the reason we bury is for the threshold, the entering into the lower world, the entering into the chamber of forgiveness, the chamber of wounds, the chamber of hearts, the chambers of self. When we move into the underworld, we are given access to the eyes, the ears, the hearts that we may express through voice, through image, through mimicry, through whatever, to release those parts of ourself into the underworld, to be received and to be transformed in whatever manner that the transformation can occur. By burying that part of myself and standing up, I shed my own tears, consecrating the sacredness of the soil that my soul was buried into, and consecrating the holy ground that was receiving my gift of my childhood, the coffin, the house of my wishing to be gone far from me, part of it. This is how I dealt with safety, finding safety, working positively with my own emotions, working against myself sometimes, working in darkness, trying to understand what trips me up until I found a little bit of light in this little piece of myself coming home, or this piece of myself getting healed, and eventually being able to take a brighter light into the darker recesses of my own self and be unflinching as I look into my own foils, my own foibles, my own trips and traps, and recognize that I too am incredibly human, just as human as the other set of ears listening to this. When we move from the place of not accepting, not working with, not morphing from one extension of self and moving into another extension of self, we have to allow that piece of ourself to move over and to find a different form of captivity, a different container, a different form, transformation, all of those sorts of things. We need to just let that go. And in doing the releasing, I am now allowing that light that I've spread into the darkness to illuminate some of the gifts I threw away and left in the corner because they didn't coincide with the eye or the vision that I had that I wasn't safe. And here we come back to that terminology I've used before, being instinct injured. So where I have abnormalized the normal and I've normalized the abnormal. It's not normal not to feel safe. That's abnormal. But for me, that was normal. And if I don't have a congruent idea of self, or the predominant idea of self is I'm not safe, then the gifts of safety are going to be tucked into the corner. As the illumination of self continues, I can see that part of myself that knows how to receive love, and I invite that part of me in. I see that part of myself which absolutely knows how to belong, and I invite that part of myself in, etc., etc., etc. And I widen the scope of myself, and I widen the scope of my emotional relationship with myself, with my friends, with my loved ones, with the humans in my healing room, to the community, and out and out and out, until that expression moves itself into the world soul, and the world soul gathers that up as my singular voice of hope and transformation and change. Recognizing where we have come from is one small part to recognizing where we're going to end up. I don't want to end up alone. I didn't want to end up as a human being who didn't feel safe. I wanted to experience more of the fullness of my own life in order to experience the fullness that life had to offer. And it's a give and take. There are times that I can revert to old behaviors, and then times when I have to force myself out of those old behaviors. Patterns can be challenging. Even though the healing process has occurred, there are times when that pattern is going to be triggered, and it takes conscious relationship to self and conscious commitment to healing, changing, and shifting in order to step away from the triggered and the safe behaviors of isolation, the safe behaviors that the lack of safety is going to give you. These are important elements of my journey from one piece of myself to another piece of myself, from one version of myself to a different, more whole version of myself. I encourage you to find something that is foundational for you that has maybe been missing, or you have an adverse reaction to, or you feel that could be a building block for you that you could put into your life, and perhaps do some journey work to recognize that where that it sits on your timeline, if it has ever been in your life, if it is something that you were taken away from you or you put down, so on and so forth. Have a good investigative process for soul and self. And until next time, I wish you many blessings, and I wish you many prayers of gratitude, and just thank you for being wonderful listeners and for sticking by the ideas and Fox's thoughts. If you have ideas of your own, please share them with us. We would love to hear from you anytime. Thank you.
Thank you again for joining us here on the Shaman's Way podcast. If you have any questions, would like to make a request for a future episode, or if you're looking for other shamanic resources, including free drumming tracks, please visit us at shamansway.net. Until the next episode, be well, everyone.